Hello, this is a story called The Magic Garden of the Pua. Once upon a time, in a faraway land called Kazakhstan, there were two neighbors, two friends. One was a farmer who grew some crops and vegetables on his land, and the other, his land was stony and not very fertile, so he just had some sheep on it. And so they made their way in life, but they were very good friends and they helped each other when they needed to. But in that land, there could be very, very fierce winters. So one winter, there were such bad snowstorms that the shepherd's sheep couldn't get through the ice to get to the grass. And that winter, they all perished and died. Well, the shepherd thought, I have no money to buy more sheep. I will have to go to the city to find work. And he went to his neighbor, the farmer friend, to say goodbye. But his friend said to him, I don't want you to leave this place. I am getting old now and the land is too much for me. I will give you half. I will put half in your name and you can farm alongside me. For if you leave, who will help me with the harvests? And who will tell me stories around the fire in winter? So the shepherd agreed to stay. He had half the land and the farmer kept the other half, and they worked their land and grew vegetables and crops. One spring, when the shepherd was out in his land digging with his spade, it hit something hard. And when he dug around it, he lifted out of the ground a little box. And when he opened the box, it was full of gold coins. He went running with the box to his farmer friend and he said, you are rich, you are rich. Look what I have found on your land. And the farmer looked at the coins and said, but they were found on your half of the land. They belong to you. But I wouldn't have this land if it wasn't for you, said the shepherd, so they belong to you. Enough of your stubbornness. Keep the coins, said the farmer. But they are not mine to keep, said the shepherd. And they argued. They argued long into the night about who should keep the gold. Well, who do you think should keep the gold? Maybe you have an idea what they should do with it. But the two men didn't. And so the next morning, they took the gold to the wise man of the village. And the wise man, he looked at the coins, he looked at the farmer, he looked at the shepherd, he looked back at the coins, and then he closed his eyes and thought. And when he opened his eyes, he said this, let the gold serve many instead of dividing two friends. Take the gold, go to the city and buy seeds, buy the highest quality seeds, buy seeds of fruit trees and flowers and herbs and shrubs. Buy all the seeds you can and come back and take a piece of your land and make a garden for the poor. Well, the two friends liked this idea. And so the next day they set out for the city with the gold. Well, on their way into the city, they saw a caravan of camels coming towards them, and there was a dreadful squawking noise. And as the caravan came closer, the farmer and the shepherd saw that hanging off the sides of the camels were birds, beautiful birds, brightly colored birds, but they were strung up with rope around their feet upside down. Their feathers were caked with dust and they were squawking madly. Well, the two friends looked at this with pity and horror. And they stopped the camel driver and they said, "How much would it be to buy these birds?" And the camel driver looked at them. He looked at their poor clothes and he said, "More money than you have. These birds are on their way to the Khan's palace." The Khan was the ruler of that land, and there they will be eaten at feasts for his wealthy friends. Well, the two friends, they brought out the little box of gold and they said, "If we give you this gold, will you release the birds?" Well, the camel driver looked at the gold and agreed. And so all the birds were untied and they flew freely up into the sky, and the ones that were still too sick, well, the two friends laid them on the ground and they smoothed out their feathers and gently massaged them until they too were able to take to the skies. And then they set out for home. They felt happy for the birds, but very sad that they wouldn't be able to make a garden for the poor. And as they walked home, they thought about that garden and how the poor would have been able to take shade in the trees or drink water from its pools and enjoy the beautiful flowers that they had been going to plant. But when they got home, what a shock they got to see that sitting on a patch of the land, there were 1,000 birds, beautiful colored birds. And the birds were pecking at the soil with their beaks, loosening the earth. And each bird had in its beak a special seed. They had seeds of all the fruit trees, all the shrubs, all the flowers that you could possibly think of. And they dropped them one by one into the little holes they had made in the soil. And some of the bigger birds pecked bigger holes, and they went to the nearby river and brought back water and made little ponds. And so the garden was planted. The next spring, the farmer and his shepherd friend watched as little green shoots came through the earth and everything began to grow. Trees grew up. There were fruit trees, apples and plums and pears and apricots. There were bushes of beautiful purple lilac and sweet lavender bushes and thyme and sweet-smelling mint. And there were flowers, all the flowers you can imagine. There were purple pansies, there were bright red poppies, there were tall yellow irises, there were elegant white lilies, there were dazzling dahlias, there were chrysanthemums and carnations, and if you can think of any more flowers, I can tell you they were there too. And the poor began to arrive. They began to hear of this magical garden, and they came and they took shelter under its trees from the sun. And when they were hungry, they reached up and got some fruit to eat. And when they were thirsty, they scooped out water from the sweet pools. And the flowers and the beauty delighted their eyes. And that garden became very famous. And maybe it's still there today. So if you have a garden in these sunny days, or maybe there's a park nearby, go and enjoy the beauty and the color of the flowers because they're all coming out.